Welcome to the Velvet Crown Tales. Today's tale is called The Four Seasonal Princesses, and the sister they called a traitor. Long ago, beyond silver mountains and sapphire seas, there stood a kingdom unlike any other in the world. Its name was Evermere. The people called it the Realm of Four Seasons, for while other kingdoms knew only one season at a time, Evermere held all four within its borders. To the north stretched winter's reach, where snowflakes danced across crystal forests and frozen lakes sparkled beneath moonlight. To the east bloomed the springlands, where flowers covered the hills in colors so bright they seemed painted by the sun itself. To the south lay the summer coast, warmed by golden sunlight and gentle ocean breezes. And to the west stood the amberwood, where autumn leaves drifted through the air like falling jewels. The seasons existed in perfect balance. And for centuries the people believed that balance came from the royal family. Each generation, 4 princesses were born. Each carried the blessing of a season. Each protected a corner of the kingdom. And so, when King Aldrich and Queen Celeste were blessed with 4 daughters, the people rejoiced. The eldest was Princess Flora. Wherever Flora walked, flowers seemed brighter. She loved celebrations, gardens, and filling the palace with laughter. The second was Princess Solara. Beautiful and confident, Solara could command a room's attention with a single smile. She adored grand balls, fine dresses, and the admiration of the court. The third was Princess Aurelia. Quiet and thoughtful, Aurelia preferred libraries to banquets. While others danced, she studied ancient histories and secrets hidden within dusty books. And then there was the youngest, Princess Elara, the Princess of Winter. At least, that was what everyone believed. Years passed, and the 4 sisters grew into young women. Though each possessed remarkable gifts, it was often Elara who could be found beyond the palace walls. Rather than attending endless celebrations, she preferred visiting villages. She listened when people spoke. She remembered names. She helped where she could. If a farmer lost livestock during a storm, Elara visited. If a widow needed firewood, Elara arranged it. If a child was hungry, Elara made certain food arrived before sunset. The people loved all 4 princesses. But many loved Elara most. Not because she was the most powerful, not because she was the most beautiful, but because she made them feel seen. Unfortunately, not everyone appreciated that. One warm summer afternoon the royal sisters stood upon a palace balcony overlooking the capital. Far below, crowds gathered in the market square. Children ran through fountains, merchants called from colorful stalls, musicians played cheerful melodies. As the princesses watched, a commotion rose from the crowd. Not a dangerous one, a happy one. People had spotted Elara returning from a nearby village. "Princess Elara! Look! It's the Winter Princess!" "Princess!" Dozens of citizens hurried forward. Some offered flowers. Others simply wished to greet her. Elara smiled warmly, and stopped to speak with them. Above, Solara's expression tightened. "They cheer louder for her every year." Flora glanced at her sister. "They cheer for all of us." "Not like that." Solara folded her arms. "She's gone for a few hours and returns as though she's conquered a kingdom." Aurelia closed the book she had been reading. "Perhaps because she spends time with them." Solara frowned. "I spend time with them." "At festivals," Aurelia replied. "Exactly. Elara visits when nobody is watching." For a moment, silence settled between them. Far below, Elara knelt beside a small child and handed him a carved wooden toy. The boy's face lit up with joy. The crowd laughed. And once again, cheers followed her through the square. Solara looked away. Something uncomfortable stirred inside her chest. A feeling she had carried for years. A feeling she never spoke aloud. Jealousy. That evening, while the kingdom slept peacefully beneath starlight, something strange happened. Deep within the northern forests, snow began to fall. That alone was not unusual. Winter's Reach often received snow. But it was midsummer, and the snowfall lasted only a few minutes before vanishing completely. The next morning, flowers bloomed from frozen ground. By afternoon, the snow was gone. No explanation could be found. The villagers called it a curiosity. The royal advisors called it an anomaly. But far beneath the palace, hidden inside a sealed chamber untouched for 18 years, an ancient crystal suddenly cracked. A thin line spread across its surface. Then another. And another. The old magic binding it was weakening. For the first time since the night Princess Ilara was born, the secret was beginning to wake. On the night Princess Ilara was born, the bells of Evermere rang until dawn. Across the kingdom, people danced in the streets. The royal family had welcomed their fourth daughter, a winter princess. The kingdom rejoiced. But inside the palace, the celebration did not last. Moments after her birth, the tiny princess stopped crying. The royal healers rushed to her side. Queen Celeste clutched her newborn daughter and begged them to save her. Hours passed. Nothing worked. The baby's breathing grew weaker. Her tiny hands became cold. And as midnight approached, the healers delivered a terrible truth. "Your Majesty, she will not survive the night." The queen broke into tears. King Aldrich felt his world collapse around him. He had ruled kingdoms, won wars, faced countless dangers, yet there was nothing he could do to save his daughter. Or so he believed. Then the royal sorcerer arrived, ancient scrolls in hand, a look of horror on his face. For he had discovered something impossible: the winter crown. The sacred magic that should have been born inside the princess was missing. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, another child had been born carrying the true power of winter. A child no one knew. A child destined for a life far from the throne. As Queen Celeste held her dying daughter, King Aldrich was given a choice: lose Ilara forever, or commit an act of forbidden magic. A choice that would change Evermere forever. The royal nursery fell silent. Only the crackling of candle flames disturbed the darkness. Queen Celeste held her newborn daughter close, tears falling onto the baby's tiny blanket. King Aldrich stood beside them, helpless. The royal sorcerer stared down at the ancient scrolls in his trembling hands. For centuries, the magic of the seasons had followed sacred laws. Each seasonal crown chose its rightful heir at birth. The power could not be stolen, it could not be forced, and it could never be divided. Yet the impossible had happened. The true winter crown had chosen another child. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, in a humble village far from the throne, a baby girl had been born carrying winter's full power. The sorcerer had seen it in the stars. He had seen it in the ancient scrolls. And now he saw it in the dying princess before him. Without winter's magic, Ilara would not survive. The king's voice broke. "There must be something." The sorcerer hesitated. "There is." The room grew still. "But it is forbidden." King Aldrich stepped forward. "Tell me." The old man's eyes filled with fear. "We can transfer a portion of the winter crown." Queen Celeste looked up. "You can save her." "Perhaps." The answer brought little comfort. "The ritual has never been attempted." "And if it fails?" asked the queen. The sorcerer lowered his head. "Both children may die." Silence filled the chamber. The queen looked down at her daughter. Tiny, fragile, fading with every passing moment. Then she whispered the words that would change the fate of Evermere forever. "Save her." The sorcerer closed his eyes. And the forbidden ritual began. Far from the palace, far from the crystal towers of Evermere, a storm swept across a small village nestled beside the frostpine forest. Snow drifted softly through the darkness. Inside a humble cottage, another baby had been born that very same night. Unlike the princess in the palace, this child cried loudly, strongly, vigorously. The midwife smiled. "She's healthy." The exhausted mother laughed through tears. The father wrapped his daughter in a wool blanket and held her close. Neither parent knew they were holding a child touched by destiny. Neither knew that ancient winter magic slept within their daughter's soul. And neither knew that hundreds of miles away, a desperate king was attempting forbidden magic to save another child. As the ritual unfolded in the palace, a strange light suddenly filled the cottage. Snowflakes began drifting through the room despite the closed windows. Frost spread across the wooden floor. The newborn's tiny eyes opened. For a moment they shimmered with silver-blue light. Then something impossible happened. A stream of glowing winter magic rose from the infant's chest. The power stretched across the night sky, across forests, across mountains, across rivers, toward the royal palace, toward Princess Ilara. The winter crown had answered the king's desperate plea, but it did not surrender completely. Only part of its power left. The rest remained where it truly belonged. Inside the village child. The moment passed. The frost disappeared. The cottage returned to normal. The baby's parents never understood what they had witnessed. But far away, in the royal palace, Princess Ilara took her first strong breath and began to live. By sunrise the kingdom rejoiced. The bells rang once more. Princess Ilara had survived. The people called it a miracle. King Aldrich called it a blessing. Queen Celeste thanked the heavens. Only one man knew the truth. The royal sorcerer. As celebrations filled the palace, the old wizard stood alone within the kingdom's ancient archives. His hands trembled as he sealed the forbidden scrolls away. What had happened that night was never meant to be known. Not by the people, not by the court, and certainly not by Princess Ilara. The secret was locked away, buried beneath spells, stone, and silence. Years passed. The four princesses grew. Flora blossomed into a gentle young woman loved by the court. Solara became dazzling and admired wherever she went. Aurelia developed a brilliant mind and an endless hunger for knowledge. And Ilara became the heart of the kingdom. The people adored her. Children ran to greet her whenever she visited a village. Farmers welcomed her into their homes. Merchants smiled when she passed through the market. She never acted like a princess above them. She treated everyone as though they mattered. And because of that, they loved her. Yet strange things occasionally happened around the youngest princess. Things nobody could explain. On her 10th birthday, snow fell from a clear summer sky. When she turned 13, frost appeared across palace windows in the middle of spring. At 16, an entire rose garden bloomed with ice crystals that sparkled like diamonds. Each incident lasted only moments. Each was quickly forgotten. But somewhere deep within the palace, King Aldrich noticed every single one. Because each event reminded him of the truth. The magic was waking. And secrets never remained buried forever. By the time Princess Ilara reached her 19th year, stories about her kindness had spread far beyond Evermere's borders. Traveling merchants spoke of her. Bards sang of her. Even neighboring kingdoms had heard of the Winter Princess, who spent more time helping villagers than attending royal banquets. Most rulers dismissed the stories as exaggerations. One did not. King Rowan Ashford, the young king of Ashfordia, was known throughout the continent as a capable ruler and a skilled strategist. Unlike many monarchs, Rowan preferred seeing the world with his own eyes. And so, while traveling through Evermere on official business, he chose to ride through the countryside rather than take the royal roads. It was there he saw her for the first time. Not in a ballroom, not at a royal celebration, not sitting upon a throne, but kneeling in the mud beside a broken wagon. An elderly farmer stood nearby looking distressed. One wheel had shattered, leaving him stranded miles from home. Without hesitation, Ilara had stopped to help. Her guards protested. The princess ignored them. To Rowan's surprise, she spent nearly an hour helping the farmer load supplies onto another cart. When the work was finally finished, the old man smiled through tears, and Ilara smiled right back. No audience, no applause, no reward, just kindness. Rowan found himself unable to look away. "Who is she?" he asked one of his companions. The answer came quickly. "Princess Ilara of Evermere." The young king watched as she climbed back onto her horse and continued down the road. For reasons he could not explain, he wanted to know more. Meanwhile, far away in the royal palace, another pair of eyes watched Ilara's growing popularity with far less admiration. Princess Ilara stood upon a balcony overlooking the capital. Below, citizens cheered as Ilara returned from another village visit. The applause echoed through the streets. Solara's smile faded. No matter how many grand events she attended, no matter how many compliments she received, the people always seemed happiest when Ilara appeared. And with every passing year, that fact became harder to ignore. For a time, life continued as it always had. The four princesses fulfilled their duties, the people prospered, and the secret remained buried. Then, on the morning of Ilara's 19th birthday, the first true warning appeared. It began in Winter's Reach. Villagers awoke to find something impossible. Flowers. Thousands of them. Bright spring blossoms covered fields that should have been buried beneath snow. Cherry blossoms bloomed from frozen trees. Roses emerged through solid ice. The sight was beautiful and terrifying. Within hours, reports arrived from every corner of Evermere. Summer vineyards were covered in frost. Autumn forests burst into spring bloom overnight. Snow fell upon sunny beaches. The seasons were no longer obeying their boundaries. The balance was breaking. King Aldric's blood ran cold. For 18 years he had feared this day. The divided winter crown was awakening. And somewhere in the kingdom, the true heir of winter still lived. The royal council assembled before sunset. Advisors argued. Scholars searched ancient records. No one could explain what was happening. No one except the king. And he dared tell no one. As the debate continued, Ilara quietly stepped toward a palace window. Outside, snowflakes drifted through the warm summer air. She stretched out her hand. One landed softly on her palm. For a brief moment, the snowflake glowed. A pale silver-blue light shimmered between her fingers. Then vanished. No one noticed. Except King Aldric. And the fear in his eyes deepened. Because he knew what it meant. The magic was returning. And secrets could only remain hidden for so long. The strange disturbances did not stop. They grew worse. Every week brought new reports from across Evermere. A river froze solid in the middle of summer. An orchard bloomed and withered in a single day. A snowstorm swept through the springlands beneath a cloudless sky. Fear began spreading through the kingdom. The people still trusted their princesses. But they wanted answers. And answers were becoming difficult to find. Inside the palace, King Aldric slept little. Every new disturbance reminded him of the truth he had hidden for 19 years. The magic was trying to correct itself. The winter crown was awakening. Sooner or later, someone would discover what happened on the night Ilara was born. And if that happened, everything would collapse. The kingdom, the crown, his family, his daughter. Fear slowly became desperation. And desperation led him toward a terrible decision. One evening, while reviewing reports from across the realm, Aldric noticed something unsettling. Every major disturbance seemed connected to one person. Princess Ilara. Snowstorms appeared after her travels. Frost followed her visits. Ancient magical anomalies seemed strongest wherever she had been. Of course, Aldric knew why. But everyone else would see only one thing. Evidence. The next morning, rumors appeared. Quiet at first. A whisper here. A question there. Nothing direct. Nothing obvious. Yet somehow the same idea spread from village to village. Could the Winter Princess be connected to the disturbances? Could her magic be causing the imbalance? Could she be responsible? Most people dismissed the thought immediately. Princess Ilara would never harm anyone. But once a seed of doubt is planted, it rarely remains small. And somewhere in the shadows of the palace, someone was making sure those seeds continued to grow. Meanwhile, Ilara remained completely unaware. That afternoon she rode into a nearby village carrying supplies for families affected by the recent weather disasters. Children ran to greet her. Villagers smiled. The people still loved her. But for the first time, a few uncertain glances followed her through the crowd. A few whispered conversations stopped when she approached. Ilara noticed. And for the first time in her life, a strange feeling settled in her heart. Something was changing. She just didn't know what. Days turned into weeks. The disturbances continued. And Princess Aurelia began asking questions. Unlike her sisters, Aurelia trusted facts more than rumors. When nobles whispered that Ilara was responsible for the kingdom's troubles, Aurelia searched for proof. She found none. In fact, the more she investigated, the less sense the accusations became. Ilara had spent her entire life helping others. Why would she suddenly endanger the kingdom she loved? The story did not fit. And Aurelia hated mysteries that did not fit. One evening, she descended into the royal archives. The ancient library stretched deep beneath the palace. Few people ever visited its oldest chambers. Even fewer knew how many secrets were hidden there. Hour after hour, Aurelia searched dusty records. Most revealed nothing. Then she found something strange. A page had been removed from an ancient chronicle. Not damaged. Removed. Deliberately. The discovery sent a chill through her. Someone had wanted that information hidden. For the next several days, Aurelia searched relentlessly. Forgotten journals, royal records, centuries-old maps. Every clue led deeper into the palace's hidden history. Until finally, she discovered a sealed door hidden behind a shelf of forgotten books. A door protected by ancient winter magic. The moment Aurelia touched it, frost spread across the stone. Her eyes widened. Winter magic. Inside the archives. Why? As the hidden door slowly opened, cold air spilled into the chamber. Beyond it lay a secret room untouched for nearly 20 years. Ancient scrolls covered the walls. Dust coated everything. And at the center stood a crystal pedestal. Upon it rested a single silver journal. The Royal Sorcerer's Journal. Aurelia carefully opened the first page. As her eyes scanned the writing, the color drained from her face. Because the very first sentence read, "If anyone is reading this, then the truth of Princess Alara's birth can no longer remain hidden." Princess Aurelia read the first page 3 times before she could believe it. Her hands trembled, her heart pounded. Every word seemed more impossible than the last. The royal sorcerer had recorded everything. The night Alara was born, the dying princess, the forbidden ritual, the missing winter crown, and the existence of another child. A child born the same night. A child who carried the true power of winter. Aurelia's eyes raced across the pages. The sorcerer described how winter magic had flowed from the village infant to the palace. How only a portion of the power had been transferred. How the balance of the seasons had been damaged. And how one day the magic would attempt to restore itself. The exact events now unfolding across Evermere. The disturbances. The storms. The collapsing boundaries between seasons. It had all been predicted. 19 years ago. No, Aurelia whispered. The room suddenly felt colder. Because one question remained. Who knew? She turned more pages. Then found the answer. King Aldrich. Queen Celeste. The royal sorcerer. No one else. The truth had been hidden from the entire kingdom. Even from Alara herself. Aurelia sank into a chair. Everything suddenly made sense. The strange weather. The king's growing fear. The rumors spreading through the kingdom. Someone was hiding the truth. And someone was allowing Alara to take the blame. Then Aurelia reached the final pages. There, written in hurried handwriting, was a warning. A warning the sorcerer had written shortly before his death. If the truth remains hidden too long, the kingdom will seek a villain. And the child they accuse will be innocent. Aurelia stared at the words. Her blood turned to ice. Because she knew exactly who the kingdom was beginning to accuse. Princess Alara. Her sister. Without another moment's hesitation, Aurelia grabbed the journal and hurried from the chamber. For the first time in her life, she was afraid. Not of magic. Not of prophecy. But of what would happen if she was already too late. Aurelia ran through the palace corridors. The journal clutched tightly against her chest. Her mind raced. Every page she had read shattered another piece of the world she thought she knew. Alara had never stolen winter's power. She had never caused the disturbances. She had never betrayed the kingdom. She was a victim. And someone had allowed the blame to fall upon her. The princess did not stop until she reached the queen's private chambers. Without ceremony, she pushed open the doors. Queen Celeste looked up in surprise. Aurelia! The queen immediately knew something was wrong. Her daughter's face had gone pale. Tears shimmered in her eyes. And in her hands rested a silver journal the queen had hoped never to see again. The color drained from Queen Celeste's face. For several long moments neither woman spoke. Then Aurelia whispered, "Tell me, it isn't true." The queen closed her eyes. Pain crossed her features. Not surprise. Not confusion, pain. The kind carried for years. The kind carried by someone who already knows the answer. Aurelia's heart sank. "You knew." The queen's silence was answer enough. "You knew all this time." Tears filled Celeste's eyes. "I was trying to protect her." "Protect her?" Aurelia cried. "The entire kingdom is beginning to blame Alara." The queen looked away. And for the first time in 19 years, she spoke the truth aloud. When Alara was born, Queen Celeste believed she would lose her daughter forever. She remembered the tiny body growing colder, the desperate healers, the king's fear, the forbidden choice, and the miracle that followed. For years she convinced herself they had done the right thing, that saving Alara justified the secret. But now, watching the kingdom turn against her youngest daughter, the lie had become unbearable. "The king won't tell anyone," Celeste whispered. "He's terrified." Aurelia's eyes widened. "Father knows," the queen nodded. "He always knew." And suddenly, everything made sense. The king's fear, the rumors, the secrecy, the panic, whenever the disturbances appeared. Aurelia looked toward the palace windows. Beyond them, the kingdom she loved was slowly falling apart. And somewhere out there, the true Winter Princess still lived, unaware that her existence could change everything. For the first time, Aurelia understood the full truth. Saving Alara had never been the mistake. Keeping the secret had been, and now the cost was coming due. King Aldrich knew the moment something had changed. For nearly 2 decades, the secret had remained buried. Hidden. Protected. Silent. Yet over the past few days, the palace felt different. The king noticed whispered conversations ending when he approached. Servants exchanging nervous glances. And most troubling of all, Princess Aurelia had stopped looking at him the same way. One evening, Aldrich summoned his eldest daughters to dinner. Flora arrived, smiling as always. Solara spoke excitedly about an upcoming festival. But Aurelia barely touched her meal. Her thoughts were elsewhere. Her eyes never left the king. And for the first time, Aldrich felt afraid of his own daughter. Later that night he followed her. Through dark corridors. Past sleeping servants. Down forgotten staircases leading toward the oldest sections of the palace. The king's heart pounded. Because he already knew where she was going. The archives. The hidden chamber. The place where the truth had been buried. When Aurelia disappeared around a corner, Aldrich hurried forward. Moments later he entered the secret room. The chamber stood empty. The crystal pedestal remained. The frost-covered door remained. But one thing was missing. The journal. The king froze. His worst fear had come true. Someone knew. Someone had found the truth. For several long moments, Aldrich simply stood there. Then his shoulders slumped. The burden he had carried for 19 years suddenly felt heavier than ever. He remembered Alara as a newborn. The desperate choice. The relief when she survived. The promise he made to protect her. He had never intended to hurt his daughter, never intended to lie to his kingdom, never intended for any of this to happen. But now the secret had grown beyond his control, and fear whispered a dangerous thought into his mind. If the truth came out, everything would be lost. The next morning a royal decree was announced. The kingdom would hold a grand council to investigate the seasonal disturbances. Every noble house would attend. Every advisor would be heard. Every piece of evidence would be examined. To the people it seemed like a wise decision. A responsible decision. A king searching for answers. But deep inside, Aldrich already knew what he planned to do. And for the first time in his life, he chose the crown over the truth. The Grand Council gathered 3 days later. Nobles traveled from every corner of Evermere. Village elders filled the galleries. Royal advisors crowded the Great Hall. Even common citizens were permitted to attend. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted someone to blame. Princess Elara entered beside her sisters. At first, she thought little of the unusual atmosphere, until she noticed the silence. People who normally smiled at her looked away. Others whispered behind raised hands. The warmth she had always felt from her people seemed strangely absent. And for the first time, Elara felt alone. King Aldrich sat upon the throne. His expression remained calm. But inside, fear raged. This council was never meant to discover the truth, it was meant to survive it. One by one, witnesses stepped forward. A farmer described a sudden frost that destroyed his crops. A merchant spoke of a snowstorm that appeared without warning. A village elder described flowers blooming through winter ice. Each story carried the same troubling detail. Princess Elara had visited shortly before the disturbance occurred. The murmurs began immediately. Quiet at first, then louder, much louder. That can't be a coincidence. She's always there. Why is she always there? Could she be causing it? Elara's stomach tightened. She turned toward her sisters. Flora looked worried. Aurelia looked horrified. Solara looked uncertain. Then the king's chief advisor stepped forward. In his hands rested a collection of reports, maps, records, witness statements, all carefully arranged, all pointing toward one conclusion, a conclusion Aldrich knew was false. The advisor spread the evidence across a massive table. Gasps filled the chamber. Every disturbance, every magical anomaly, every unexplained event, connected by a single name. Princess Elara. No, Aurelia whispered. She understood immediately. This wasn't an investigation, it was a trap. Across the room, Elara stared at the evidence. Confusion filled her eyes. She had done nothing wrong. She knew she had done nothing wrong. Yet suddenly, the entire kingdom seemed to believe otherwise. And as the whispers grew louder, one terrible word began spreading through the hall. A word no one had ever associated with Princess Elara before. A word that would soon change her life forever. Traitor. The whispers became accusations. The accusations became demands. And soon the great hall erupted into chaos. She must answer for this. The kingdom is suffering. Someone is responsible. Every finger pointed toward Elara. Every eye turned toward the Winter Princess. Elara stood frozen. Not because she was afraid. Because she was confused. She had spent her entire life helping these people. Protecting them. Caring for them. How could they believe she would ever harm them? Then a nobleman stepped forward. Princess Elara, he declared, can you explain why every disturbance follows your presence? The hall fell silent. Elara opened her mouth. But no answer came. Because she didn't know, she had been wondering the same thing herself. The silence only made things worse. More whispers spread, more doubt, more fear. Then suddenly, enough! The voice echoed through the chamber. Princess Flora stepped forward. The entire hall turned toward the eldest princess. Her green eyes blazed with anger. You speak as though you've already judged her. Nobody answered. Flora moved to Elara's side. She has spent her life helping this kingdom. She has visited your villages, helped your children, fed your hungry. And now you condemn her without proof? For a moment the crowd hesitated. Many remembered those acts of kindness. Many remembered what Elara had done for them. Then another voice spoke. Princess Solara. Everyone turned, even Elara. For a brief moment, Solara looked torn. The conflict was written across her face. She had envied Elara for years, envied the love she received, envied the admiration she inspired. But this wasn't what she wanted. Finally, Solara stepped beside her sisters. I don't know what's causing these disturbances. Her voice trembled. But I know Elara. The hall grew quiet, and I do not believe she would betray Evermere. For the first time that day, hope flickered in Elara's heart. Then Princess Aurelia stepped forward, still clutching the silver journal hidden beneath her cloak. Her pulse raced. This was it. The moment she had dreaded. The moment she would reveal everything. The secret. The journal. The truth about Elara's birth. The truth about Winter. The truth about the king. But before she could speak, King Aldrich rose from his throne. The room instantly fell silent, and Aurelia felt a chill crawl down her spine. Because the king was looking directly at her. And somehow, he knew. The hall fell silent. Not the quiet of peace, the quiet of shock, the quiet that comes when a life changes forever. Princess Alara stared at the royal decree, the words blurred before her eyes. Traitor. The same people who once cheered her name now whispered that word behind trembling hands. The same kingdom she had spent her life serving now looked at her with fear. No, Flora stepped forward immediately. This is wrong. Her voice echoed through the chamber. You cannot condemn her. I agree. Aurelia moved beside her sister, the silver journal clutched tightly in her hands. There are things this council doesn't know. King Aldrich's gaze locked onto the journal. A flash of panic crossed his face, gone in an instant. But Aurelia saw it. And suddenly she understood. The king would never allow the truth to be spoken. Not here, not now. Solara looked between her sisters. Between the king. Between the crowd. For years she had envied Alara. For years she had wished the kingdom would admire her instead. But watching Alara stand alone beneath hundreds of accusing eyes, the victory felt hollow. Painful. Wrong. Then Alara spoke. For the first time since the accusations began. I didn't do this. Her voice was soft. Broken. Yet every person in the hall heard it. I don't know why these things are happening. Tears filled her eyes. But I would never harm Evermere. For a moment. Many citizens hesitated. Many wanted to believe her. They remembered the villages she had helped. The children she had comforted. The kindness she had shown. Then a violent tremor shook the palace. The floor cracked. Gasps filled the hall. Outside the windows, dark clouds gathered across a bright summer sky. Snow began falling. Heavy. Sudden. Impossible. And at the center of it all stood Princess Alara. Frozen snowflakes swirled around her. Blue light shimmered beneath her feet. Winter magic burst from her hands. Uncontrolled, unwanted, terrifying. The crowd recoiled. Several people screamed. Others pointed. The magic! Look! It's her! Alara stared at her glowing hands in horror. She wasn't controlling it. She couldn't stop it. The magic was awakening on its own. But nobody knew that. Nobody except the king. And in that terrible moment, the kingdom made its choice. The whispers became a roar. Traitor! 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 The word echoed through the great hall. Over and over, until it drowned out everything else. Even Alara's tears. The snow continued to fall. Heavy. Relentless. As though the kingdom itself mourned what was happening. Princess Alara stood in the center of the great hall, while the cries of "Traitor!" echoed around her. She looked toward her father, the king she had trusted all her life. The man who should have defended her. But King Aldrich would not meet her eyes, and somehow, that hurt more than the accusations. Flora rushed forward first. You can't do this. Tears streamed down her face. She's innocent. Guards stepped between them. For the first time in their lives, the eldest princess could not reach her sister. Father, stop this! Aurelia shouted. The silver journal trembled in her hands. You know the truth. The entire hall froze. King Aldrich's face drained of color. But before Aurelia could reveal more, royal guards surrounded her. The journal was seized. Its pages scattered across the floor, and the king's voice thundered through the chamber. Enough! The hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward the throne. King Aldrich slowly stood. His expression was stone. His voice emotionless. Almost as though he was speaking to a stranger, not his daughter. Princess Alara of Evermere, the words echoed through the chamber. You are stripped of your royal title. Alara's breath caught. You are hereby banished from the kingdom. Flora sobbed. Solara stared in disbelief. Aurelia looked ready to fight the entire palace. But Alara simply stood there. Broken. Silent. The guards approached. Yet before they could touch her, something unexpected happened. Princess Alara stepped in front of them. The entire court gasped. For years Solara had envied Alara, but now, none of that mattered. Move! The captain of the guard ordered. Solara didn't move. She is still my sister. Her voice shook, but she stood her ground. Flora joined her, then Aurelia. For a brief moment, all four sisters stood together. One last time, Alara looked at each of them, the sisters she loved, the family she was about to lose. Tears filled her eyes. I'll be all right. It was a lie. They all knew it. But she said it anyway. Because she couldn't bear seeing them cry. Hours later, the palace gates opened. A single horse waited beyond them. No servants, no royal escort, no farewell celebration, only exile. As Alara rode away through the falling snow, thousands of citizens watched. Some looked guilty, some looked afraid, some looked convinced she was dangerous. And hidden among the crowd stood a familiar face. King Rowan Ashford. His jaw tightened as he watched the Winter Princess leave alone. Because unlike everyone else, he did not believe she was guilty. Not for a single moment. And as Alara disappeared into the storm, Rowan made a decision. He would find her, no matter where she went. Alara rode through the snow alone. The further she traveled from Evermere, the heavier her heart became. Her kingdom had rejected her, her father had abandoned her. And for the first time in her life she had nowhere to go. Night fell quickly, the storm grew stronger. Then suddenly her horse stumbled. Alara fell into the snow. Exhausted and freezing, she struggled to stand. Darkness crept into her vision. Just before everything faded, she heard hoofbeats. A rider was approaching. And then a familiar voice called her name. Alara! The world faded in and out. Snow stung Alara's face. Her body felt heavy. Cold. So very cold. She tried to stand. But her strength was gone. The hoofbeats grew louder. Closer. Closer. Until finally they stopped beside her. A strong arm caught her before she collapsed again. Easy. The voice was familiar. Warm. Steady. Safe. Alara forced her eyes open. At first, the blizzard blurred everything. Then the rider pulled back his hood. And her breath caught. Rowan? The young king smiled softly. I've been looking for you. For the first time since her exile began, Alara felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Without another word, Rowan wrapped his cloak around her shoulders. The heavy fur shielded her from the freezing wind. Then he carefully lifted her onto his horse. Where are we going? Alara whispered. Rowan glanced toward the mountains. Somewhere your father's soldiers won't find you. As the horse turned away from Evermere, Alara looked back one final time. The kingdom she loved had disappeared behind the storm. Ahead lay only uncertainty. But she would not face it alone. Not anymore. When Alara opened her eyes, the storm was gone. Warm firelight flickered across wooden walls. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then she remembered. The accusations. The exile. The kingdom she had lost. You should be resting. Alara looked up. Rowan sat nearby beside the fireplace. Relief filled his face when he saw she was awake. You saved me. Rowan smiled. I couldn't let you freeze to death. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just quiet, the kind that comes after heartbreak. Finally, Alara lowered her eyes. They all think I'm a traitor. Her voice cracked. I don't even know why these things are happening. Rowan leaned forward. Then we'll find out. Alara looked at him. Why do you believe me? The young king didn't hesitate. Because I've seen who you are. He smiled softly. The people of Evermere may have forgotten. I haven't. For the first time since leaving home, Alara smiled. Only a little. But it was enough. Outside, snow continued to fall across the mountains. Far away, Evermere drifted deeper into chaos. And neither Alara nor Rowan knew that her sisters were already searching for the truth. While Alara recovered in the mountains, her sisters refused to give up. Flora. Solara. Aurelia. Together they followed every clue hidden within the Royal Sorcerer's Journal. The search led them north. Beyond the capital. Beyond the royal roads. to a small village beside the frost pine forest. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The village was quiet, peaceful, ordinary. Then Aurelia noticed something. Snowflakes were falling, only around one cottage. Even though the sky above was clear, the sisters exchanged nervous glances and approached the house. A young woman stepped outside carrying a basket of firewood. She looked about Elara's age, long silver-white hair, bright blue eyes. And the moment she appeared, frost spread across the ground beneath her feet. The sisters froze, because for the first time in their lives, they were looking at the true winter princess. The young woman stared at the three princesses, and the three princesses stared back. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Aurelia stepped forward. "What's your name?" The young woman shifted nervously. "Lyra." The moment she spoke, a cold wind swept through the village. Snowflakes danced around her. The frost beneath her feet glowed softly. Flora's heart sank. The journal had been right. Aurelia carefully removed the final pages of the royal sorcerer's journal. She showed Lyra the ancient records, the date of her birth, the signs of winter magic, the prophecy, everything. Lyra's face turned pale. "You're saying," she struggled to speak, "that I'm the true winter princess?" No one answered, because the truth was written plainly before them. For 19 years, Lyra had unknowingly carried winter's crown, while Elara had carried the blame. Tears filled Solara's eyes. For the first time, she fully understood the injustice. Elara had lost everything for a secret that was never her fault. Then the sky suddenly darkened. A powerful wave of magic swept across the village. Snow exploded into the air. Trees froze solid. The ground trembled. Aurelia looked toward the horizon. Far away, above Evermere Castle, a massive storm was forming. Larger than any before. The balance of the seasons was finally collapsing. And if they didn't return soon, there might not be a kingdom left to save. The young woman stared at the three princesses. And the three princesses stared back. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Aurelia stepped forward. "What's your name?" The young woman shifted nervously. "Lyra." The moment she spoke, a cold wind swept through the village. Snowflakes danced around her. The frost beneath her feet glowed softly. Flora's heart sank. The journal had been right. Aurelia carefully removed the final pages of the royal sorcerer's journal. She showed Lyra the ancient records, the date of her birth, the signs of winter magic, the prophecy, everything. Lyra's face turned pale. "You're saying," she struggled to speak, "that I'm the true winter princess?" No one answered, because the truth was written plainly before them. For 19 years, Lyra had unknowingly carried winter's crown, while Elara had carried the blame. Tears filled Solara's eyes. For the first time, she fully understood the injustice. Elara had lost everything for a secret that was never her fault. Then the sky suddenly darkened. A powerful wave of magic swept across the village. Snow exploded into the air. Trees froze solid. The ground trembled. Aurelia looked toward the horizon. Far away, above Evermere Castle, a massive storm was forming, larger than any before. The balance of the seasons was finally collapsing. And if they didn't return soon, there might not be a kingdom left to save. The next morning the sisters rode for Evermere. Rowan rode beside them. Lyra traveled at Elara's side. Above the kingdom, the sky churned with unnatural storms. Winter, spring, summer, and autumn collided across the land. The balance was nearly gone. As they approached the capital, citizens filled the streets. People stopped and stared. Because Princess Elara had returned. And she was not alone. At the center of the group rode Lyra. The moment she entered the city gates, snowflakes began swirling around her. Frost shimmered across the stone roads. The winter crown was responding. Word spread quickly. The Grand Council was summoned once more. Nobles, citizens, advisors. Everyone gathered inside the great hall. King Aldrich sat upon his throne. His face turned pale when he saw Elara enter. Then Lyra. Then the journal. For the first time in 19 years, the truth had come home. The great hall was silent. Thousands had gathered. Nobles, citizens, advisors. Every person who had once called Alara a traitor. King Aldrich sat upon his throne. For the first time in years, he looked tired, defeated, afraid. Princess Aurelia stepped forward. The royal sorcerer's journal in her hands. The same journal that had been hidden for 19 years. You deserve the truth. Her voice echoed through the chamber. And then, she told them everything. The dying baby, the forbidden ritual, the missing winter crown, the village child, the secret that had shaped the kingdom's fate. Gasps filled the hall. People stared at Alara. Then, at Lyra. Then, back again. Aurelia opened the journal. Page after page. Record after record. Proof. Undeniable proof. The crowd began to realize something terrible. Alara had never betrayed them. She had never caused the imbalance. She had never been the villain. She had been the victim. Then all eyes turned toward the throne. Toward King Aldrich. For a long moment the king said nothing. The weight of 19 years rested upon his shoulders. Finally he stood. Tears filled his eyes. I was trying to save my daughter. The hall remained silent. I was afraid. His voice broke. And because of that fear, I let an innocent child carry the burden of my choice. Alara felt tears fall down her cheeks. Not because she hated him, but because she finally understood. King Aldrich slowly removed his crown and bowed his head before the kingdom, before Alara, before Lyra, before the truth. I'm sorry. The truth had finally been revealed. But Evermere was still dying. Outside the palace, storms raged across the kingdom. Snow buried spring gardens. Summer rivers froze. Autumn forests crumbled beneath ice. The balance of the seasons was breaking apart. The royal sorcerer's final words revealed the solution. Only by joining winter's divided power could the kingdom be saved. Together, Alara and Lyra stepped into the center of the palace courtyard. Flora stood beside them. Then Solara. Then Aurelia. The 4 seasonal princesses. And the girl fate had hidden from them. As they joined hands, brilliant magic erupted into the sky. Green light. Golden light. Amber light. Silver blue light. The colors of the seasons swirled together above Evermere. The storm roared. Then slowly, the skies began to clear. The seasons returned to their proper places. Spring blossomed. Summer warmed the fields. Autumn painted the forests. Winter settled peacefully upon the mountains. The kingdom was saved. Months later, Evermere flourished once more. The storms were gone, the kingdom was at peace, and the people never forgot the mistake they had made. Princess Alara's title was restored. Not as the traitor princess, but as the savior of Evermere. King Aldrich spent the rest of his reign earning back the trust he had broken, and though forgiveness came slowly, it came. Lyra was welcomed into the royal family, not as a replacement, not as a rival, but as a sister, the 5th daughter whose place had always been waiting. Flora remained the kingdom's heart. Solara learned that admiration meant little without kindness. Aurelia became the kingdom's greatest scholar. And Alara finally found peace. One spring evening she stood upon the palace balcony. Rowan beside her, her sisters laughing below in the gardens. The kingdom shining beneath the setting sun. Once they had called her a traitor. Now they remembered the truth. She had never betrayed them. She had only loved them. And in the end, love saved Evermere. And so the 4 seasonal princesses and the sister they once never knew proved that truth, forgiveness and love are the strongest magic of all.